So tell me, how are you coping with the COVID season and working remotely?
We're coping absolutely fine. In fact, I've come to the decision I don't need my office anymore.
Yes.
Yeah, so my husband Stephen is in construction, and so he's working from home as well. He's currently working on the redevelopment of the Penrith Hospital, and but he works from home most of the time. He's out on site today, but yeah, so as long as we don't get in one another's way, we're doing fine. So I can still meet my students if I need to catch up with them, with exception to those in Melbourne, because of course they're in level 4 lockdown. We do a lot on Zoom anyhow, so it really hasn't made a massive difference.
No, it's been an interesting season. We're going to commence in 1 minute, and if you've joined us, we'd like to welcome you, and we're going to start very shortly. So, you know, pull up a pew and maybe a cup of tea. And we're really looking forward today to talking to Bernadette Janson, who's also based here in Sydney. She has a school of renovating and works primarily with women to do joint ventures and teach them how to build their own property portfolio and or to buy, renovate and sell. So it's an exciting time to be looking at renovating, and it can be done in the COVID season despite the safe distancing. So it's 1 o'clock, we're going to commence. So allow me to welcome you into the space. Welcome to the live streamed events at Caroma Collins in Sydney. Our flagships are currently open, so if you'd like to come and see us, come and have a cup of coffee. We have got safe distancing measures in place, temperature checks and hand sanitizers. So business as usual, or as usual as it could be in a virtual world. We're missing seeing you here, so we look forward to seeing you at in-house events again. And also Adelaide is open, so if you've got any renovations that you want assistance with, and or you've got commercial jobs on that you'd like some specifying for, we certainly, as business as best as usual, so please feel free to get in touch with us. I will be sending an email post-event that will give a link to book appointments with any of our staff. And how Caroma Collins and Caroma Parade work is that 5 interior designers on staff that come at no cost to you. And Bernadette's used the services, and it certainly makes life a bit easier, right? So
yes, absolutely.
So please feel free to book a consultation with one of the designers who can be of assistance for you. We have got remote consultations with our interior designers, and you can have a coffee. So if you prefer to stay home and you're safe distancing, you can have the consultation via live streaming and or come on and have a coffee. We promise we'll look after you. A few upcoming events before we get to going with today's speaker. Adrian Ramsey's next week, 13th of August, a very dear friend in Noosa, and it's a trend reset for 2020, the impossible task of knowing what's next. In architecture and interior design, there are always emerging trends. How do you know when it's time to get on board and when the trend is done and dusted? We can make some terrible trend mistakes, and when it's time to move on. Why do some people have this skill set and others don't? The future is here in every new moment. Reading what will stick and what will fail is an art that you can learn from. So that's Adrian next week. The following week, very exciting, the Bower, if you're into sustainability, customising your bathroom on a budget with reclaimed materials, 20th of August at 1 p.m. While the federal government has opened the door to providing cash grants from home renovators as part of a new round of economic stimulus, those who are sustainability and budget conscious are ever pursuing alternate ways to renovate. The Bower pioneered programs to reduce the amount of waste entering landfill by reclaiming household items for repair, reuse and resale at affordable prices by encouraging communities to engage in repurposing of pre-loved goods. As an environmental charity, the Bower in Marrickville and Parramatta hold regular workshops on site and also Zetland electronic workshops to help educate the community about reuse and repair. Join Louise Grace as she speaks to customising your bathroom on a budget. So there are 2 events coming up, looking forward to those. However, today we have the fabulous Bernadette Janson. About renovating. This is from Bernadette. You may be thinking about renovating for a while and wondering if it's for you or if you're cut out for it. Bernadette will share a bit today about what renovating is for our community. Bernadette says, it's not having to put up with a job that is either boring or toxic. Renovating will not only replace your income, it will give you your freedom and bring joy from your day to day. You don't have to put up with the same nagging money worries. That's a good one. You know you can do this. You have spades of natural flair and can't wait to let it loose to breathe life into tired old properties. It's a feeling financially secure in retirement. After spending the best years of your life focused on your family or career, you can be behind the financial 8 ball. Renovating is the means to catching up quickly. A little bit about Bernadette before we ask her questions and answers. Bernadette Janson has been a serial renovator for over 30 years. She is the founder of the School of Renovating, where she helps women transform their flair for creating beautiful homes into a profitable income to replace their day job, fast-track an ailing retirement savings, or just have more fun money, and who needs some of that? So Bernadette, an absolute pleasure to have you in the Caroma Telpum. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Deb. It's lovely to be here. And I have to say, after listening to your intro, I'm just really amazed at the vast array of speakers that you are able to attract. And it's such an incredible resource. So thank you.
An absolute pleasure, and I'll pay you for that later. I think Caroma will. Yeah, well, I'll swat that one out later. I think so. Thank you kindly. And in reality, I couldn't be doing this without Vanessa Trail. Let me say that she's our producer and an absolute legend behind the camera. So if you've joined us, Vanessa's with us today, as is Bernadette Janson. Let me ask a couple of questions to get the ball rolling. Tell me a little bit about what you do.
Okay, so as you said in the intro, I have been renovating for over 30 years. I actually was an ex-nurse, registered nurse, and I retired when I had my first baby, who is now 30. And I married someone who was in the building industry. So Stephen is a project manager in construction, and when in our early days, I actually thought that we were absolutely made. Like, I had that passion for renovating at that early stage. I did my first reno when I was 13. And I really thought, you know what, we're going to rock the world. And we did a lot of projects. We started on our own. Then I started buying property to renovate, and I did development, subdivision, you name it. And there came a point in my life when I looked at what we were doing, and I realised that I had been so sort of goggle-eyed about the renovation and that process that I loved, that I hadn't paid enough attention to the strategy. And while we always got really fabulous prices for our projects, we weren't really making the profit that we should have been making. And that was for a few reasons, but one of the main reasons was because we were renovating like a builder would renovate. So, you know, Stephen was in the industry. We followed his process. We used his trades. And when you are renovating for profit, you need to be more strategic about that. And you need to be, often the profit you make is what you don't do. And you need to be really savvy. And so as a result of that, I actually and it was around about the time that I realised that I needed to get my act together in terms of retirement. And so I made a change to the way we operated. And the first thing I did is outlawed DIY, because we were big on DIY. We both, like, Stephen would spend his weekends doing roof frames, and I'd tile miles of tiles and whatever. And we had to wean ourselves off it, because the problem with that is that we basically, you don't factor in what you're doing yourself. So you end up sort of working for nothing. So while we were making profit, we weren't actually paying ourselves proper wages. And so I made the change and put together a process. So I had to be a little bit, operate differently. So be careful about what we bought, and got it really rocking. And so once I'd figured that out, I then started thinking, well, okay, so now I'm just working on building sites, you know, and I'd only do 1 or 2 projects a year. But then I was sort of bored and lonely, because living on being on a building site, the tradies are doing their work, and you can't, be out lunching and whatever all day. And so I started to look at what I could do next. And I really, really love working with people. And so I thought, you know what, I have got a skill that I know can make a massive difference to other women in my position. And so I started the School of Renovating. So basically I created something I wanted for myself.
Awesome.
So that's right.
So tell me, just, and this isn't our question, but how many people have done your School of Renovating course?
Around about 400.
That's awesome.
So
you've got
small groups, like we don't have, you know, a lot of the renovating educators have big auditoriums. We don't do that because I try to know everyone personally, and I do know everyone personally, and I think that makes a difference. Yeah,
that's awesome. So tell us why women? Why women specifically?
So when I say women, it's not necessarily not men, but what I know is I have been in their shoes, and I know that a lot of women who have that burning desire to, you know, to transform their life with property, have what it takes. They're just missing the confidence and the sort of the process, the system. And why women is because I know I can make a massive difference to them. And I think it was the Dalai Lama that said, if you build wealth in a woman, if you give a woman an income, the whole family benefits from it. So the world benefits from women being better off. So I see it as, you know, part of, you know, making a difference, not just to women, but to all the people they touch, their families. And that's certainly how we approach renovating. We're really like, I've got this saying that we've used renovating to solve all the little problems in life. And that's been, you know, how our families functioned.
That's awesome. They're good foundations, aren't they? Good building foundations. There's good skill sets learned on a renovating site that also set you up for life. There's life skills learned on the renovation site, right?
And also, you know, with your children, one of the strategies we use, I call it the avocado smash strategy. And so, and I find by doing a project with your kids, it somehow fosters this entrepreneurial spirit in them. So it just changes their outlook on life and money. And yeah, so it's got lots of spin-offs.
It's a funny thing that you should say at the avocado. My son is 28 and has 3 properties and has a business called Smashed Avo, and he likes to teach millennials property development. And yeah, so it's a funny thing. Well, I have to connect the two of you because I think you'd talk the same language. So funny, it's funny you just mentioned it now. Question 3: how did you get started? Like, why renovations? How did that happen?
Okay, so so as I mentioned, I did my first reno when I was 13.
How does someone do a renovation at 13, Bernadette? Seriously.
I'm using the word loosely. So my family were dairy farmers, and my room was not what I thought it should be. And you know, in farming, often, like, my family obviously kept the home very respectable, but they were not embellishing in any way because that wasn't the best use of their money. And so I decided that I needed to create grander surroundings for my teenage life. And fortunately, I had a mum who was incredibly supportive. And so I set about recreating my bedroom in a way that would make it more beautiful. And so it was in the 70s. You don't remember that really swirly wallpaper?
I do. Was it flocked? Was it flocked wallpaper?
Flocked, but it was lime green. It was a white background with lime green swirls and navy. And so I did a feature wall in that. So I went into the local hardware, you know, went through all the books, found the one I wanted. And then I painted all the furniture and painted the other walls and the ceiling and everything, new curtains. And when I had finished that, I got this incredible sense that I just felt completely empowered. Like, you know how, you know, it's like I have got the power to change my world.
Amazing.
Because I felt I felt like a rock star. Like, you know, it probably was pretty trashy because, you know, it wasn't very old. But for me, I was just, and that was the beginning of my addiction. Like, my poor mother must have been a saint, because the next thing I did, I decided to take on the bathroom, the family bathroom, and that required tiling. And I couldn't do tiling, but I had a boyfriend that was a bricklayer. So, like, he was a rubbish boyfriend, but he was a good tiler. So, and, you know, God, if my kids wanted to do that, I'd want to kill them. So yeah, it was pretty fun. So there you go. So that's how
it's a funny thing. My father had a paint and wallpaper shop, and I'm laughing because we have these parallel lives. And I used to use the scraps from the wallpaper, which was flocked, and obviously in the 70s, to cover all my school books. So I take great delight in hearing you say that you had this fabulous wallpaper. In the 70s, there was a lot of psychedelic stuff going on in the 70s with wallpaper. So your mother obviously had the patience of a saint.
Yeah.
It's lovely to hear. It's coming back. I'm sure it's coming back. Next week we'll find with the trend reset whether it's coming back. How would someone who is interested in renovating get started? Like, where do you start with a renovation?
So the first thing you need to start is, so one of the things, the first places to look is what you've currently got, okay? So what I have found is that often when people first look at improving their financial position, they may have a family home that has potential that they've not fully developed. That's many. Sadly, when people get closer to retirement, they tend to start thinking, like I did, oh my God, I better hurry up and do something. I need to buy a property. I'm paying too much tax. And unfortunately, there are a lot of unscrupulous property people around. And often they end up buying something off the plan or a house and land package. And almost always they are negatively geared. Like, that sort of investment is not the right thing to be buying when you're quite close to retirement, because they need 10, 20, 30 years to actually grow. Often they're overpriced because of the big, fees, the commissions. And so often the first thing to do is to really look at what you've got. And if you've got something that is like a rope around your neck and costing you money to hold, that's the first thing to look at, because, there's no point in going out and trying to make more money until you've cleaned up, the backyard. And so that may mean giving it a spruce up and putting it on the market, as some of our students have done that. May mean adding a high cash flow strategy to it. It just depends. But then once you've got that sorted out, you've maximised the value in your own home. Some people don't have a family home, so that's their first purchase. Like, a lot of the property gurus say the family home is not an asset, and I really rail against that, because for most people it's the majority of their wealth, and if they're savvy about it, you can piggyback on that to build an incredible fortune. And that's certainly how we have operated. We started out, we set up a line of credit against our family home. Mm-hmm. That's what I ran my projects from. So I would take the money out of that to pay the deposit and whatever costs I had to pay. And then when the project was over, if it was something I sold, or even if it wasn't something I sold, once it increased in value, that money would come back out and go back into the family home. And so I should actually point out, with a little disclaimer at the moment, so whatever you do with property, you must go and get advice that's specific to your personal circumstances from your financial planner, your accountant, your finance person, because what I'm talking about is very general, and what works for me may not necessarily work for you. And also, like, even our students, I say, before you buy a property, you must always talk with your accountant, because there are so many things that go into that feasibility that you need expert input on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then from that, we go to what's the next project. And that depends a lot on whether you want to, say you're completely over your job and you want to replace that income now. Well, then the first thing we would do is look at probably buy, renovate and sell to produce that cash flow. If you've got sufficient funding, then you can quite, I guess, reasonably produce around, 100,000 a year just out of one project if you've got enough borrowing capacity. And then once you've got that sort of machine set up and you've got that income coming in, then the next step is to start buying, renovating and holding, so that you're building that portfolio for the time in your life when you may not or may not be able to work. Because one problem with renovating is that if you're doing buy, renovate and sell all the time, when you stop working, the money stops coming in.
Right. So, so speaking about renovating, is there a bad time to renovate?
So it's more challenging when the market is declining. There is no doubt about that. The easiest time to actually make profit is when the market's on the way up or it's static. However, in saying that, it's also much harder to get properties because the market is really hot. You really want to, being able to buy at rock bottom is obviously ideal, but if you're renovating all the time, you need to be able to establish a risk management process so that you can renovate regardless of what the market is. And that's pretty much how I view it. Yeah.
Right. And like I obviously, we as designers, I always think that we have a bit of an edge because you can see a before and after, but that's not necessarily the case. Does everyone have to have a skill set or be good with design?
No, well, there are plenty of designers to help you with that. You don't necessarily need to have that skill set. Obviously, it's something you pick up as you go along. Like, I think a lot of what I've learned has been from the interior designers that I've worked with. And so if you are not confident with that, and like I have found that plenty of the women that we work with are confident with it. They've been making over their own homes for years, so they know what works and what doesn't, but they need to learn the strategy around it and being savvy with your market. The big drawback with renovating for profit is you can't necessarily do what you want to do.
Right.
Because I don't know, do you know the Three Birds?
Yes.
Like, I absolutely love their stuff. However, like on my current project at the moment, there is no way I could do that style of renovation, right, because it just won't meet my market. So that's where I think the skill comes in, just being more in tune. And while the look and feel of it is important, I'm going to go out there on a limb and be really, I guess, controversial and say that's not the most important thing. I have seen renovations, not my own community, but other renovations from renovators who I don't think have the best eye for detail, and yet they still make the profit.
Right.
So it's getting those fundamentals right. Like, I'm not for 1 minute advocating that you do a less than perfect renovation. In fact, I take pride in my attention to detail, and that also gives the people you work with, like your agent, your real estate agent, a lot of confidence in the product. But, I guess what the message I'm trying to make is that it's not all about your design skill.
Right. Okay. It's interesting. The flip side of that is knowing where to save and knowing where to spend. If I look at a company such as Caroma, it's a subtle plug here, but we have from, we have some of the products are lifetime warranties. So where do you invest in products and where do you cost save in products if you're specifying?
It depends on the price point of the property, but it's always important to make sure that the quality is there and that they have a good warranty. Like, I would love to put lifetime warranty in all my projects, but the reality is my buyer won't pay for it. But I do, I think your Luna range is for projects up to, say, $1 million. In Sydney, like I know $1 million buys a lot in other areas, but in Sydney, I think that's perfect for those projects because it's very cost effective. It's still beautifully designed. It's nice quality. And so, yeah.
Do you need to be good with your hands if do you ever get on the tools?
Well, you know what? I have to say, weaning off DIY, it's a bit like giving up drinking, because when you have been, done things yourself so much, that tends to be your automatic go-to. And I actually found my husband, Stephen, I found it quite hard, not so much on projects because he doesn't really have much input on the projects, but on our own home, I really found it hard to get him not to DIY. And in the end, what I did was I'd engage someone to come and help him with the project so that he wasn't breaking his back on it. And then he eventually got the idea and thought, yeah, this is okay. And so the DIY's gone out the window. Because the problem with DIY is that you never factor in what you do yourself. Okay.
Right.
So, you'll go through the scope of work, you think, yeah, I can do that and I can do that. So I don't do it. And so you're basically working for nothing. If you're going to work for nothing, why do it?
That's awesome. And look, there's a pleasure of being involved to some degree if you're a hands-on person, but you've also got to, your time is money, right? So you have to be strategic.
And the other thing is that while you're doing that, you're not supervising the work, and you're not. So I see the role of the renovator is to make sure that the trades are, kept up to date, keep the scheduling on track, to make sure the materials are there when they need to be there, to negotiate the materials and the trade. So there is plenty of work to do. But for the trades, you want people that are doing it day in, day out, that can do quality work quickly. And so you're not paying holding costs to hold it. And so
you're better off working on the renovation, not in the renovation, right?
Because if you're limiting your capacity to what you can physically do yourself, I can tell you're going to burn out really quickly.
Yeah, we don't like burnout. Tell us about the finances. That's probably one area that people struggle. How do you manage the finances on a renovation?
Basically, when you are renovating a property, generally we get an investment loan, and preferably interest only. And then you need, depending on whether it's an investment property or it's a buy, renovate and sell, you need between 25 and 40% of the value of the property in cash. And that's to pay the deposit, to pay the stamp duty, to pay the renovation costs, the holding costs for the duration of the property. Now, as I mentioned, how we have always done it is we've had a line of credit that we work, I call it the bucket, and that we just take money out of for our projects. And then you just need an investment loan to actually purchase the property. One of the, I guess, challenging things about if you're going to sell the property is that it doesn't really work with the commission structure of a mortgage broker. You sort of have to go to the bank unless you negotiate a fee with the broker, because their commission structure is tied to, like you've got to keep it for 18 months. And if you sell it in 6, then they pretty much work for nothing. So that's probably one of the downsides of buying, renovating and selling, because I think if you get a good mortgage broker, they are worth their weight in gold.
Right.
Yeah.
What sort of renovations do you do yourself? What's your bent?
So my go-to is 2-bedroom apartments, because I like them because they're pretty easy and you can get a big wow without a huge amount of work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
interesting. And what areas?
Well, generally I do them close to home. Although last year, so, as I mentioned, I like to experiment. I've got a renovating bucket list. So different strategies that I want to do before I die, basically. And
I don't know anyone on the planet who's got a renovation bucket list apart from you, Bernadette. So well done you.
I'm sure there are more people with one, but anyhow. And so one of the things that a lot of our students were looking at was splitter blocks. And while you can buy splitter blocks in other states, there's a lot in Queensland. I think there's something like 14,000. So I thought, okay, I better do a splitter block to figure out the what's what with it. So last year I actually did a project in Queensland, and that was where we bought a house that was on a splitter, which is basically a double block, but it's on one title. So all you have to do is split the title and you've got an extra block of land, and that sort of helps your profit potential. But of course, my house was over the boundary and it was brick, so we couldn't move it. So it was a bit more complicated, but anyhow, we realigned the boundary, we separated off the block, but because then the house is on a much smaller block, you have to pare back your reno, because it's not like you're going to get the top dollar, because it's not going to be that big, iconic family home.
Right.
And so there were things that I would have loved to have done with that property, but I had to use restraint because I just didn't have the budget to do it. But so that I did that in Queensland. I've renovated in Darwin, I've renovated in Adelaide, I've renovated in Victoria, and done lots and lots in Sydney.
There's a question here from Tracy. Do you save more if you DIY? Is it worth doing the first reno this way to save a lot of money?
Tracy, it depends if you are, like I should mention, if I was holding the property, I think DIY is a great idea, because if you're paying it off for 30 years, why not, reduce the amount that you're paying off? But if you're renovating to sell, you've got to factor in the time it takes you to do the renovation and the quality of the work. So if you can justify that time and you can still make the profit, well, yeah, you've sort of got to do, like I say, I don't DIY, and I absolutely don't. And I think that if you're in this for the long haul and you're about becoming a professional renovator, you're going to generate 100,000 to 300,000 a year, however much you want as an income. You have to get off the tools, because it just won't happen. But, if you're just inching into it, it's your first project, then, and you want to DIY some stuff to keep the costs down, you're nervous about that, well, yeah, definitely.
You can do. Okay. At the moment, obviously with COVID, government grants to renovate. Tell us about that.
Okay, so the government grants really only apply to your principal place of residence. So that's your family home. Now, I'll talk a bit about, the ins and outs of them, but one of the things that you need to, I guess, a couple of scenarios where I think there are some options for improving your situation with government grants are downsizes. Okay, so if you're planning to downsize, then getting a government grant to do a renovation on your family home before you sell it will put a lot of money in your pocket. The other thing is, if you don't have a home, then you could, maybe do a house and land or buy a substantial renovation. Now, there are some restrictions about how you do it. It's a $25,000 grant. It has to be a principal place of residence. It can be a house and land package, and you can buy a substantial renovation, because that is considered a new property. Okay, so just quickly, one of the things about renovating is, if the property is deemed a substantial reno, it means that when you sell it, you have to pay GST on that property. That means regardless of whether you've made profit, you have to pay 1/11 of that sale price to the government as GST. So you need to be very careful about that as a renovator. As a buyer, if you're buying a substantial renovation, either as a first-time buyer or using that grant, well, then in most cases, I won't give a blanket thing, but in most cases that will qualify. Now, in terms of the caps, so the income cap is $125,000 per annum for a single person, and 200,000 for a couple. But the value of the property, now let me think. So the value of the property cannot be more than 1.5 million.
Right.
And in order to, so if you're going for a house on land or a substantial reno, the value of it cannot be over 750,000. And there was one more thing. Oh, so you need to spend 150,000 of your money. Okay, so if you spend 150,000, you need to get a building contract, and it needs to be signed and executed before, I think it's the 31st of December. And then you can claim that that rebate, and depending on the strategy you're going for will determine when you actually get that 25,000. Does that make sense?
It does. But beyond that, Bernadette, if people haven't picked everything you've just set up now, post-event, in the comments box, are you happy to DM some information to people?
Absolutely, yeah.
Fantastic. There's a couple of questions here that have come in. Neil, thank you. What percentage of property value do you spend on the reno, assuming it's a 2-bedroom apartment?
So it depends on the scope of work, but if I was going for a purely cosmetic renovation, I would be doing probably around about 6%, okay? At the current reno, we paid $925. My budget is $57,000. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Neil. I hope that answers your question. A question from Catherine. Hi, Bernadette. What profit margin would you expect to make on a reno to sell? Is it generally 10% or does it vary depending on the type of property and location? For example, Sydney market versus Adelaide market.
Okay, so I generally do my feasibilities on 10%, but in saying that, I have made significantly more than that. Sometimes I've made less than that, but generally speaking, but I've had some renovators that have made absolutely extraordinary, like 20, 30%. So it depends a lot on the area, how well you know your market on the market. So it's also easier to make a higher profit if you're in a rising market, because sometimes the market's rising so quickly that, you know, you get capital growth in the short period that you own the property. So
right.
Yeah, I hope that helps.
Thank you. Sevda, what do you find adds the most value? For example, floor finishes, light fittings, kitchen upgrade. I'm sure it's a bathroom renovation. That's just my take at any rate.
So really, I like, when answering this question, I like to quote Aristotle. So basically, the value of the parts is, the sum of the parts is worth more than the value of each component. So basically what we're doing is going for that overall look. So we want to, renovations go best in areas where there's a shortage of land, where we can't have a new property. So the renovation is the compromise. And like definitely kitchens and bathrooms. So we do a thing called a cosmetic plus. I actually don't like doing a purely cosmetic renovation. I think you need a bit more than that to sort of push up the profit potential. So I always like to add a component of livability to the project. So, you know, one of the things we do is, you know, if we can get that wall out between the kitchen and the living room, then, and create more open plan, that's going to really add a, you know, a functional element and make it just so much more practical and beautiful. So, yeah, so I would say you're basically looking at an overall look. We make sure that everything, it's not like we would rip out every kitchen. We might make over the kitchen, but we make sure that everything is providing a consistent, beautiful look. And yes, kitchens and bathrooms are the most important thing.
Fantastic. We've got a few more questions coming in, but I guess we'd also love to have a look at some of the renovations you've done. Could you screen share something for us so we can have a little look?
I've just got a couple of our most recent ones. And so let me see if I can, I'll get my slides up before I hit the screen share button, because otherwise you'll see my very messy desktop and that won't be good.
That's okay.
Okay. So you remember I talked about the project where we did a splitter. So we added a land component. Now, I would have dearly loved to totally rework the front of this property, but I couldn't do it because of the smaller block, and I had a very limited budget. So I just had to really make good the front, and so that's how it was in the beginning. So I just really cleaned it up and tidied up the landscaping. I devoted all my budget to the internals.
Wow.
So that's before and after. So that's that front room. Now, you know, I did think about pulling it off because it's not original, because this was a very lovely, solid, old original home. However, I just decided this would be a family that was buying the property. Bad days, that was a fantastic area for kids, so we'd just spruce it up, and that's what we did to, you know, to make it useful and clean and tidy. So it had really nice original features.
Some not so nice original features too.
Oh, well, yes, well, I'm overlooking those bit. So, yeah, so it was a very sort of bare bones reno, but yeah.
Loving the white, Bernadette.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? White on white, that is. So I talk about, you know, some sort of functional improvement. So the problem with this home was the kitchen had 5 doors off it.
Oh, dear.
So the bathroom, a bedroom, the hallway, the living room, and the laundry door. And so you could not get any cohesion in the floor plan. So I spent most of my money sorting this out. And what I did was I got the wall where that cupboard is removed, and then I extended the hallway wall. So all the bedrooms and the bathrooms are off the hallway, and then there was more of an open plan kitchen. So there you see it now. So that's just an IKEA kitchen. So this whole project, including the driveway, the landscaping, the fencing, everything, 50,000. So
that's awesome.
Wasn't a lot of money, so I really
that's awesome.
Smart with it. The reason I went for IKEA is because I wanted that farmyard sink. So if I went IKEA, they have it quite a good value sink.
I'm sure Caroma's got a nice sink that you could have used.
Oh, yes. I'm not taking the company line now, am I?
Well, yeah, I had to go there, didn't I? Please.
Yeah. So the other issue with this home was it had 1 bathroom, but the toilet was out the back and down some stairs, still under main roof. And so when doing this bathroom, I actually got a toilet put into it. So that's another little functional improvement. And so,
oh, look at that. That's magic.
Yeah. So that's the existing bath. I just sprayed it. And yeah, so really nice. I like tiling to the ceiling. I really cannot stand tiles that go halfway up the wall. And so you'll notice, doesn't matter what the budget is, I make sure my tiles go to the ceiling. I'd rather not tile a wall at all than tile it halfway.
I understand that.
Yeah. Okay. So another thing, old trashy wardrobes, just got my builder to strip them out and put new doors on them, and we ended up with lovely new looking wardrobes. Same thing.
We love a good great before and after. Look at that. Looks magic, doesn't it?
Yeah. So this is definitely a very tight budget reno. I'll show you another one that wasn't quite so tight in a minute. So that's the main bedroom. Okay, so just to show you, so you can see this kitchen, all the doorways off it. So what I did was I took out this wall. So it was double brick, so I had to get an engineer involved in doing that, but took it out and then extended this wall up this way so that it gave the floor plan cohesion. Quite a simple, that process cost me about 10,000. But definitely worth it because it just created a lovely feel about the home. So, you know, the lady that bought that now has the opportunity, if she wants to change the facade and work on the street appeal, she can. So this was I actually did 3 projects last year, and it just about killed me, to be honest, because one of them was in Queensland.
Right.
But this is one of our avocado smash projects. So our second, we've done 2 so far. Our second child is David, who is an architect. And so this was a project that we did with him. And I have to say it was very nice because he's an architect. He was able to do most of the work. But of course, a lot of his work is high end, like he worked on Barangaroo House. Like he's used to spending $40,000 on a bath, and so really making that adjustment was a bit of a team effort. And so that's the kitchen. That's a custom kitchen. Incidentally, that kitchen would probably not cost any more than a flat pack. So the reason I use IKEA flat packs, or whatever, generally it's IKEA, is because the speed I can get it. But if I've got the time, I'll do a custom kitchen because it really doesn't cost a lot more and you get a much better finish.
I noticed there's a question here from Jenny just while you're on that, and I can see it looks as though the kitchen's well styled. So is styling important to sell a property?
Yes, you would know that, Deb.
Yep.
Yeah, styling is important. Depending on the property, how far you go. Like sometimes I generally do my own styling, but sometimes it's a situation where the furniture I need to put into it, it's not cost effective to buy it. And so, I'll bring Coco in, or, one of the local stylists to do it. But yes. So this property had the popcorn ceiling, which,
the joys.
Not that on trend at the moment. So that was one thing. And also the kitchen was an eating kitchen, so we needed to open that up. So this is a new kitchen. So one of the things that David did, this was his finesse, and I think it was quite nice, is because we couldn't open it up fully, what he did is he wrapped the joinery material, the 2-pack, around the external wall. So it looked like you were looking at the end of the joinery, but in reality, that was the wall, because we couldn't open it up any further. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So, so that's one of the bedrooms.
A lot of white going on. Is this a staple for you, Bernadette?
To be honest with you, that Wynnum project is the first one I have done white for a long time. You've got
to love white on white, because in reality, people want to dress their home the way that they see fit. It's a little. I always liken a room to the little black dress. If the bones are there, you can add your scarf and your earrings. Sorry, gentlemen, you can add your scarf and your earrings, or a belt or a jacket, and it totally changes the look of the dress or of the outfit. But the same for the bedroom and the kitchens. You can totally change your look. If it's white and the bones are good, you can dress it according to seasonal flavours or something that's on trend.
Yeah. And so one of the wonderful things about this project is it had 180-degree views of the sea from every window. So it was,
it's really quite beautiful.
Yeah.
The artwork looks important in the styling.
It is. I personally think the artwork really makes the styling. And when you are scrolling through the real estate pages, you really want your listing to jump off the page.
Of course.
And so in order to do that, you want to get a piece of art that really speaks to your market. Now, the really funny thing about this project is we knew our market was upwardly mobile, Bondi, because it was in Bondi couples. And so one of the things that we did was it had a laundry, so we converted that into an ensuite. So the main bedroom had an ensuite and a walk-in wardrobe, so a master suite. And so we had 2 bedrooms, each with their own bathroom, so that way, because it's a high-ticket item, two couples could live in it. And the lady that bought it was a 70-year-old downsizer. And so I just thought, oh my gosh, you can never pick. And so she would come into the home and she would ask the agent to leave her to sit there for, 20 minutes or so to get a sense of how much noise there was, whether there was cross-flow ventilation, and she absolutely loved it, and she paid top dollar for it. So
fantastic. There's a question coming from Stacey.
Yeah.
Do you typically use the same subcontractors for each renovation, or different ones depending on the prices given?
Pretty well. I've been using the same subbies for a few years, probably because we moved into the centre of Sydney about 6 years ago. So I had to get a new team because my trades from the suburbs just could not hack the parking and so on. But yeah, pretty well. So, yep. So you can see, or you can just see the sea out the window.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So that's that one. I think I've got, oh yes. So he was very brave with his tile trap. Oh, you'll see some Caroma products there.
There we go. Subtle plug.
That's Luna, I think, which I really love the shape of that. So yeah. So yes, and that's the toilet suites Caroma. So yes, we would definitely.
Stunning.
So now this is a project that one of our students, this is a married couple. They decided that they wanted to make a change to what they were doing to go to full-time renovating. And this was their family home at the time. And they decided to renovate and sell it. I tried to talk them into holding it because I thought it had good earning potential by setting up an Airbnb, but they decided to sell it. So they came and did the program, and sort of that changed the way they did their plan. Like, they were originally going to spend $3,000 on a new front door. And the thing is, when you're renovating your own home, you tend to be quite emotional about the decision. Not just this, also for the new buyer. You're thinking, this is a family home. I have to, and seriously, it's crazy. And so anyhow, afterwards, they still changed the front door, but instead of spending $3,000, they spent $300. And they made an extra $280,000 on their sale.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah. So this is a couple of years ago. So hence the style. They've since done, I tried to get some of their recent projects in, but I just, didn't quite get there. But they've since done 3 or 4 projects. And yeah, so they've made the transition to renovating full time.
Look, I'm sure there's a myriad of other images, Bernadette, that you can share, and we can certainly add those to the comments box. But what I'd love you to talk about now is your program, because if you've given this 30 years, you can fast track people into another space and short circuit their overspending or overcapitalising. You know your stuff. So tell us a little bit about your program.
So basically, we have a program which is called Wonder Women. So basically, that's a combination of renovating training plus coaching. So that, and the coaching we have on different levels. Okay, so depending on how much you need, some people do really well. You just teach them the process, set them on the way, and they just go and rock it. I've got a couple that do their projects in the eastern suburbs. They're doing roughly a project a year. They're making around about, I think the lowest profit they've made is $208,000 on a project. Okay, so some people just rock with it. Other people need a little bit more support. In most circumstances, it's around confidence, okay? It's around just having that little sort of backup. So if things don't go, don't go exactly to plan, and something that you can be assured of is once you head down the renovating road, nothing goes to plan. And so you need to be, quite flexible, but that's part of what I love about it. And so basically you come in, you do the boot camp, and then towards the end or in the middle, we do a strategy session with you to make sure, because it's all around mapping out your path. It's not a one size fits all, because everyone comes with different circumstances. They've got different assets. So we help you to navigate what the best way for you, what projects you should be doing first to actually get to where you want to go. Some people are really happy with what they're doing in their job. They want to just build a really supercharged portfolio. Other people absolutely can't stand their job and want to quit it yesterday. So one of the things we need to do is look at your finance strategy so you can get into projects straight away. And then some people just want to make more money, want to have better holidays, and so they've got a lot more options. So that's pretty much, like in a nutshell what we do. So it's renovation training. We also do Airbnb training. I would not be suggesting anyone start an Airbnb business at the moment until we get this COVID, until the lockdowns are over. Like certainly, actually most of our students have got fantastic occupancy at the moment. But in terms of, renting properties for Airbnb, I just would hold off on that. But in terms of your existing properties, maximising their return, that might be something that you look on. And yeah, so basically we cover joint ventures, we cover pretty much everything that you need to know. And I'm constantly learning, so that learning gets shared into my community. So it's around keeping up with the latest and greatest. And yeah, that's it. So it's called Wonder Women. And
so how can we access that? Obviously there's people online today that are in this course, but also post when we post it on live streaming, there'll be other people. How do they access the course? Okay. And is there a deal that you can give us today that's going to encourage people to find out more information?
There is a deal I can give you today. So basically for the first 12 months of Wonder Women is $4,999, and that includes everything. It includes a level of coaching over the 12 months. It includes all the training and basically the support to get you where you want to go. And then if you want to continue on, then year 2 it drops down to $199. Yeah. So, but for that first year, for anyone that comes through the Caroma link, I'm happy to give you $1,000 rebate. Okay.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, because I really appreciate Deborah actually sharing the message. I know that we can make a massive impact on your life, and so I want to make it as easy as possible for that. So what I'll do, Deb, is I'll give you a link that you can share. That's to my calendar, because I think it's best that we have a chat before you make a decision, because I know there's lots of things that you need to know, and we need to know that you are in a position to be able to take action. And yeah, there you go.
Fantastic. That's incredibly generous of you, and it's there's a lovely feeling of there's almost a mother hen of renovation coming in alongside, and it's that little bit sense of security that you've done the journey and you know the shortcomings and the pitfalls, and it's nice to have that comfort. So thank you so much for bringing that to our viewers today, but also potentially those moving forward who watch the live streaming. I'd suggest that there are other renovation companies out there, but Bernadette's a Sydney-based girl, and she knows her stuff at the end of the day, and I'm sure she can fast track things for you and assist you with your own personal renovation and or renovating for profit moving forward. So Bernadette, we actually have come to an end, and I'd love to say thank you for sharing some of your wisdom and knowledge and insight, and obviously 30 years of experience. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Deborah. It's been an absolute honour. Before we go, I'd just like to share my experience of coming into the Caroma Centre, or the flagship store. The thing that I got most out of it was the feedback from Mimi about what clients want, because that's incredibly, as well, because I already knew the products in some ways because I'm, dealing with them every day, but that was, for renovators, that's gold. And so what I did was I actually recorded a podcast about it. So if anyone would like to listen to that, if you're interested in renovating for profit, the gold that I received from the Caroma Flagship store is in the latest podcast of She Renovates.
So there's a shameless plug for Caroma in there at the end, and I'll pay you for that later again too, Bernadette. So thank you. But folks, I know there's another 5 questions come in. What I'd like to say is, this is not the end of the questions for Bernadette. I'm going to share the Facebook link with Bernadette for the comments so she can come back and answer those few questions that we didn't get to today. But we need to release people back to their working world and their home life. So we are signing off. Bernadette, thank you so much. But please, folks, don't think that this is the end. The Facebook live streaming will be there and available for subsequent views if you'd like to go back and watch it again. And certainly Bernadette can be reached. I will be sending out an email shortly saying thank you for attending, to those attending today, and giving you Bernadette's details should you like to reach out to take advantage of some of the valuable offers that she's given us this afternoon. So thank you so much, Bernadette, for joining us. Thank you, folks. Please.
Thank you, Deborah.
An absolute pleasure.